welcome back to the show. I'm here with Dominic Watson, the lead engineer of Preside at Pixelate Interactive. And he is going to be talking about doing marketing automation using the Preside platform, which is a ColdFusion platform and CMS. So we're going to look at some basic questions here. Why you'd even want to use a CMS and not your own homegrown piece of code, or not use one at all. And why yet another ColdFusion CMS had to be created. And why they shifted from closed source to open source and problems they had with that. How Preside is different from ContentBox and MuraCMS and other CMSs. And what exactly is an application platform? And how you can customize the Preside application platform with the extensions and cascading inheritance and overriding core behavior. And also why you should be doing marketing automation in your ColdFusion business apps. So welcome, Dominic.
Thank you. Hello.
So yes, hello. Joining us from England. So let's start off with a big question in the room. Why should people use a CMS instead of just rolling their own code or not using one?
For sure. I'll answer it to start with. For us, we have a business that sells services. So we create sites for our clients. So all of our clients require CMS. They are large organizations with multiple editors. They won't have their own in-house teams. So they need to be able to create content through tools that are easy to use and have all the features that you require for managing content. If the question is aimed at you're an in-house team with a single application, why would you use a CMS? I would suppose it's, especially if we're talking about using Preside as a CMS, it's around formalizing your processes around creating your content. So rather than doing it through code all the time and requiring that kind of expertise, you're doing it, being able to focus more editorially. Just very briefly, if we were to look at that with Preside, it marries very well with your kind of technical abilities and the ability to do a little bit of code to kind of then allow your editorial side of things to get to grow much better.
Yeah. So it kind of abstracts out the content from the rest of the application.
Absolutely.
And I was kind of interested in the ColdFusion State of the Union survey this year, and the biggest CMS was Homegrown. Which kind of is a little surprising. Let me just share that on the screen for the folks who are watching on YouTube. But
I guess it's surprising and it's not, right? I mean,
31% of people taking that survey have a homegrown CMS. Actually, the biggest winner on the CMS category is 41% of people who don't even use a CMS.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, and I don't think either of those surprise me. I suppose when you say no, don't use a CMS, a lot of people, I suppose, in that bucket will be people that don't need to use a CMS, right? But the ones using a custom homegrown, I think my previous employer was an in-house team, everything built on their own framework. And I think it's really part of how CFML ColdFusion has evolved, right? Like if you didn't pick up Mura, you weren't aware of that. The options weren't there. So it's really easy to build stuff and we all love building stuff. And I think as well, I don't know if it's famous for it, but ColdFusion has a lot of developers that don't come from a comp science backgrounds, right? They've got into ColdFusion some way else. And so the hobby instinct is much more there, right? To go, okay, yeah, let me build our own thing. And it's really a great language to do that. So that doesn't surprise me. Although it's maybe it's not with WordPress. We don't have that Goliath, right?
Right. No, but we have some good CMSs. We've got Mura and ContentBox, which are both open source. Preside, which is open source. And then we've got Common Spot and Contents, which are commercial. And I think Far Cry is open source.
It is,
yeah. So lots of good CMSs there.
Yes.
So I guess the next question is, there are so many CMSs out there. Why create yet another ColdFusion CMS?
Okay, so again, it's from our own perspective, the Preside has been around for a lot longer than it appears to have been around. So it was at Pixelate, it was a commercial application that we licensed to all of our customers. Nobody else outside of Pixelate used it, but it competed on a lot of features from the other CMSs out there. We had a large number of medium, large size clients that were using it. We had made the decision to open source, and so this is going back, I think, 15 years. So we'd made the decision to open source it. And we, in terms of our business, yeah, sorry. In terms of our business, yeah, why did we open source it?
Yeah.
For me personally, my feeling, so from the commercial standpoint, my feeling was that it wasn't, because there are so many other CMSs out there, the notion of trying to push it commercially in the CFML world seemed like an uphill struggle and not something worth doing. So for me, it was, let's open source it, make the most awesome thing we can for the open source community and build relationships that way, and then see what opportunities we can get, because we're not going to build these connections otherwise, so we may as well open source it. I'm also a big fan of open source. Yeah, I try to use open source software as much as possible. So even at work, when everybody else is on OS X and a few people on Windows, I'm the only person that uses Linux. So I'm quite strong-willed and kind of pushed that agenda. But there was a commercial side to that as well. The other one, actually, interestingly, for any kind of business-minded folk, is when we were going out to tender for contracts, and they say, what platform do you use? You know, they would stipulate that it had to be open source. Oh. So I think from the business perspective, that was the key driver. It was a lot of tenders kind of wanted to see that you were using an open source platform. And we found that we've won some of our biggest clients recently down to the fact that it's open source. They've been able to go onto Jira, see the activities, see our, you know, see what's going on and how we respond to the community. And that gave them confidence and enabled us to win the deal. So yeah, that's probably the biggest driver commercially. Yeah.
So
yeah,
when you shifted from closed source to open source, you know, what were the problems with doing that shift?
I don't think there were any problems at all, actually. If
you
anything,
didn't have to clean up the code. I mean, the code was
all
beautiful.
Well, yeah. I mean, I just hit the delete button. So I was
you deleted all the old code.
Literally, I was tasked with, okay, we're going to make this open source. I was recently made lead developer at the time. It's like, okay, let's see how much of it we can keep. And I, you know, scratching my head. We'd done some intermediary version of our code where we were enabled to build our applications with ColdBox, but still using the old framework, and it was sort of kludged together a little bit. And then, yeah, contemplating what was needed to happen to migrate it, and there were such fundamental changes. I just hit the delete button and we went with it, and we've ran with it, and we've not looked back. It's kind of transformed our services business using the platform that we now have. So. I suppose there were problems with that. There was a kind of time where AI was developing stuff that wasn't being used for quite some time, and then, you know, once we were starting to use it, some of those early clients, you know, that the feature gap. But that's really problems with rewriting something from scratch rather than the open sourcing itself, which has been nothing but beneficial, really.
So maybe a hidden benefit of making it open source was that the code now needs to be more readable and maintainable.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I mean, I'm very self-conscious, and the people I work with are very self-conscious. And when you're working in the open, you have a sudden, you've got a much bigger impetus to kind of maintain quality, I suppose. When you have some of the voices around in the community that you become weary of, it doesn't seem to be the case anymore, actually. And we're kind of just happy to put out our stuff, and we strive to make it the best quality just for our own pride. So, but yeah, it's definitely a good side effect. Yeah.
So now we've got multiple open source CMSs, including Preside and ContentBox and MuraCMS. How is Preside different from the other ones?
Sure. So I would say to start off with, we're probably more similar to ContentBox than Mura. The biggest difference between us and Mura is that we're really an application framework with CMS abilities. So you can actually use Preside CMS purely as an admin application for some database. Without any CMS, you can just turn all those features off and use all of our application framework abilities. And also in terms of the way you develop your CMS client sites, perhaps, is very much more ColdBox style. Well, not even style, right? It's ColdBox. So a much more MVC, an organized approach to the development of your CMS platform. In terms of our difference with ContentBox, it's really how we build extensions and applications and how we override the core offering. Also, the other big difference is with ContentBox, they've done a really great job of atomizing everything. So you're using ColdBox modules to kind of, use the kernel, if you like, of ContentBox is relatively small, and then you kind of bring in the features. We take a different approach, and we just put in everything that we know that we need to use all the time and start off with that. And we're happy with that. And we understand the philosophy of atomizing and breaking things down, but we seek to strike a balance. And obviously we won't put everything in for the sake of it. We kind of want to strike a balance where you've got more to start with. So as opposed to, from what I've heard of, say, Drupal development, where you want to use a checkbox in a form, you have to install the extension to make a checkbox, right? There's the kind of the extremes, and we certainly tend to the, we're not extreme, but we offer out of box much more than the other CMSs out there and frameworks. Yeah.
So really, you might say, that Preside is an application platform that has CMS abilities rather than it's a CMS that you tack on your application to.
Yes, absolutely. And that's born out of the kind of work that we do, where the Pixelate business has largely been dealing with membership organizations. We have other types of clients, but we will have a membership organization that need a website with lots of editorial content, and yet lots where their members log in, do various types of tasks, and integrating with CRM systems and things like that. So all that kind of real custom application development. And the platform really sings when those two things are combined. Really, you can't, when you're developing it, you're doing it all in one way. There's not this, I'm building this separate application and I'm trying to figure out how to shove it into my CMS. Yeah, that's really it.
So when you say it's an application platform, what exactly is an application platform?
So from my perspective, what that means is it's a platform that is giving you tools, and also in our case user interfaces to do the most common things. So so to have audit logging on changes, have versioning of your data, have content that's translatable. That's more of a CMS concern, I suppose. The ability to build menus, admin permissioning, all of those things, but coming with a user interface behind it that you can then just build upon. So you're not having to think about, developing that whole system for yourself. There's so much in there already that is the most common stuff that you need to build. That the platform just gives you a real leg up. And where you're having then to do more, the platform also is giving you concerns to be able to use that even in your custom development you want to use. So again, like the audit logging, you've got common patterns for doing that, and then you've already got the UI built for you. that's really it. Yeah, I think.
And what are some other examples of application platforms out there?
Good question. I think from what I understand of it, it would be, if we think about Python and Django, I suppose, would be an equivalence. I'm not experienced with Django, so I couldn't give you a proper full comparison. But I believe that does similar things. Where we are aimed at competing is kind of things like Kentico, which are closed source, which are CMS platforms, but also do other application development. Yes, I'm afraid I can't think of any other examples, really. I can't think of any examples in the CFML world, unless you.
Yeah, I wasn't restricting it to ColdFusion.
No, sure. Yeah.
So.
I mean,
what about
CFML itself is an application platform, right? I mean,
yeah, it ties together a bunch of
one,
functionality and puts it all in one package.
Yeah, right. And we can obviously, all the frameworks and platforms on top of the language obviously try to go a step further, and we go, a lot of steps further. Right? You've got CF login and all of those things. Those are kind of application platform concerns, right? Yeah.
So in the Preside platform, you have extensions. Can you tell us a bit more about how those work? Because I think they're quite tricky to conceptualize, right?
Yeah.
The first time you come across them.
Yeah.
But hopefully they're easy to use when you use them.
They are, yes, exactly. And they're easy to develop once you get the ideas. So a Preside application is pretty much a ColdBox application structure with some extra folders for various of our own conventions. The Preside core itself has exactly the same folder structure as your application, and your extensions also have the same folder structure and can do all of the same things that your application can do, and the Preside core itself does. So with extensions, and how Preside works is you can override and merge with just about anything in the core.
Really?
So yeah.
So if you don't like something Preside does in its core behavior, you can just totally replace it.
Yes. So you can, and to a granular level as well. So you can change the labeling, right? You can change the name of something. We've got a contentious label for basically user groups, and they're called website benefits, which was contentious internally, but you can just go ahead and just change your .properties file in your extension and change the language of that, or you could rewrite the whole language of everything to Wookiee, as well as supply actual translations, right? You could have an extension that was just translations. You could have extensions that add fields into the data model or take fields away from the data model, modify any form that you can see in the admin. And really, so you can override that on the extension, and then your application can override extensions. So we have a commercial extension that we're developing at the moment that's an event management platform. And it comes with a core set of user interfaces, etc. But where we'll integrate it with a big site, they will want to introduce their own tagging. And so we're very easily able to really easily just add those fields into the extensions data model, and it's the extensions forms, and all of a sudden you've got the application specific logic in there. So the key driver for us was this notion that you could have an extension that gives you the core features and that you don't touch it. If there's something you want to change, you just change it in your application. The only code you write is in your application, and you do that once, and the same for the core as well. And so we have this notion of cascading inheritance.
So the advantage of doing it that way rather than just hacking into the core code is that when a new version of the core comes out, all the extensions continue to work.
Exactly.
Whereas if you messed around with the core code, you're now off on a different fork of code.
You can't then update. And people are of course free to go ahead and fork it and make their modifications directly in there, and then find that they can't upgrade. We can't stop people doing that, but we give you the tools so that you don't have to do that. And I think that's also true of ColdBox. So we have taken ColdBox. We've made a few modifications to it, but without having to touch ColdBox. So a really core one and a really awesome one, I think, is we have the ability that you could have 3 extensions that all add a whole different action to a handler. So when we look up a handler action, there isn't necessarily one CFC that supplies all the actions. It could be several of them. And if you added a new handler action in your application, you would only have to add that one handler. You wouldn't have to extend the core handler, and it would pick out the right function from either the extension, the core, or your application, depending on which one implemented it. And it would always take your application first. But yes, hopefully that explains
So I guess
it.
the fancy name for that behavior is cascading inheritance.
Yeah, I think so. It's one that we came up with, but I'm sure it's not unique to us in terms of the naming of that. But yeah.
No, I think, that's a term in other, like CSS
Yes.
has it too.
Well,
So
exactly right.
any object-based thing is going to have inheritance.
Yes, and it cascades. Yeah,
Yeah, pretty usual that it cascades. Otherwise, why would you do the inheritance if it could only go one level?
Yes, yeah.
Cool. So it sounds like a really powerful platform for creating applications and letting you tweak around with the behavior without, stepping on the core files.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the CMS is in there as a side benefit,
It's becoming, well, that's not quite, but yes, it's true to an extent. Yeah.
Though the benefit of the CMS is also that, if you have people who are editing content, they don't have to mess around with the code or the database to get things to change. They've got a WYSIWYG interface to change things.
Yeah, and some really nice features in that as well. So we've got one of the very first features, and was a strong feature in the old platform, is widgets, which are basically the same as Confluence macros, right? So you can insert into your content. You don't need any development experience. There's a library of macros or widgets for us that you can insert in. They give you a configuration form. Developers can create, you can knock out a simple widget in 10, 15 minutes development-wise. And then you've got it there for editors to be able to do neat stuff with.
Cool. So let's turn to marketing automation, because I know your talks on marketing automation. So what exactly is marketing automation, and why should people be doing it in their ColdFusion business apps?
Yeah. So from what I've experienced of marketing automation, and so I'm a developer, I'm not a marketeer, but from the angle we're talking about, we're talking about the ability to reach out to your customers, automatically and intelligently, right? So you may have people that are on a free plan, and you've detected that they're doing certain things in your application, and maybe you can, with some smart rules, you can figure out that they're reaching some limits. And so you can automatically push out to them and say, hey, have you considered our gold package? So you could do that through an email, or you might push it in the application itself, right? You might push some editorial content that's saying, hey, by the way, this, that, and the other. You could be more sneaky about it as well. Other examples where you've got an anonymous visitor that's looking at your site that you've tagged up with all sorts of topics, right? And you've detected that they've kind of got a high percentage of a certain type of topic that they are looking into. This notion that you can then start pushing them marketing messages to pull them to a register and say, oh, we can, this topic that you seem to be interested in, we've got this benefit if you sign up. We can send you emails about this kind of topic or something like that. And this is the direction we're going with Preside, and the upcoming release, which I don't know when this comes out, might be the very latest release. And our previous release kind of introduced this notion of a rules engine in the core platform that's really powerful and allows you to start thinking about this and implementing really nice solutions for your applications and your clients, and combined as well with the release that's coming up. We have an email center that allows you to manage transactional email and as well as marketing email, and combine that with any rich data that you have in your application to do really powerful things. Yeah.
Wow. So that sounds really useful for someone who's got a SaaS product or anything where your customers interact with you and you're sending out transactional emails or other emails to them to encourage them to do certain behaviors on your site.
Yes.
And what kind of emails does Preside support? Is it just transactional emails or?
No, so we can do transactional emails, and with the transactional emails, we allow the editors to edit the content in that. So when you define a transactional email template that you will programmatically send out, say an event booking confirmation, all you define is actually the variables that will be available to insert into that, and you code whatever you need to do to generate that content. But then it's up to the editors to do the rest. And they're able to put in widgets like we have in the front-end site. They're able to put those into the email content. So even in your transactional emails, the editors are able to put in some automated even content that will allow them to target other, promote other content, right? So maybe it's an event booking confirmation. They could put in some content in there that says, okay, these are other events that are similar to that one that we know you haven't booked. So there's no point in them promoting an event that you haven't booked.
So this
right?
isn't like a broadcast email where it's the same email going to everyone. It's totally customized based on a behavior. Yes. And even when it's sent, it's only triggered to be sent when that behavior happens for that individual user. So for that, I mean, that would be a transactional email. So then we have editorial email that can be used for newsletters, and you would want to use this when you have really personalized content that you want to push, as opposed to using MailChimp. And if we had a client that was sending out a newsletter that was the same every single time, I mean, I have confidence in our platform, and I wouldn't hesitate to recommend using it, but I would guess that we would say, well, MailChimp's probably more appropriate. At least for now, until we have a little bit more. But you're allowing much more complicated segmentation of the list.
Well, exactly, right. And so we have, so these rules now allow you to filter in really intelligent ways based on whatever data that you can collect. So a lot of the times we'll integrate with CRM systems and we'll pull that data into the application. And so we've got a really rich data set as well as all their interactions with the website. So we will, and I think I mentioned before, we have an event management system that is done on Preside. So it's an extension to Preside. Actually, it's a commercial product. But a real common use case there is the editorial team for a big event will set up a series of emails that are going to go to delegates of that event, but they can then target deeper. So they can say, well, it's a delegate of that event that has been to this category of events for the last 5 years. So we might send them out something really targeted, or it's delegates who are on this event are able to book on these kind of limited sessions and haven't booked any of their sessions, and we've got a week to go. And so the editorial team can set up those emails and can do a couple of things. They can schedule when the email is going out, and that could be on a repeated schedule. And they can also say, well, only send it out once to this individual ever, or once to an individual every 6 months, no more than once every 6 months, or something like that. So then, if some data changes, which means the recipient is now able to receive this email, their email is going to go at the next scheduled time to them. So that's one way we can do that kind of automated marketing. A less kind of marketing example is we have two-factor authentication for the admin. So what we could have, if you have a lot of administrators in the system, two-factor authentication can be a bit tricky to set up sometimes. You can do a custom email that's saying, hey, it looks like you're having trouble signing on with two-factor authentication. Call Jack, and he'll come down and help you with that. He's got, or provide a more in-depth guide than the on-screen help can give you. So you could set up an email that filters on admin users who have who have two-factor authentication set up, but who have never successfully activated two-factor authentication. and have never logged in within the last 2 days. Or you would probably want to do it 20 minutes, half an hour, and have that email send every 2 minutes and only once to somebody. So there's lots of creative things you can do with that. And for teams that are looking after a large set of users, they can think really creatively how they can start to target those users.
That sounds very powerful, and it's like some of those more custom closed marketing automation systems like HubSpot or some of the other ones out there. Infusionsoft's the other one that comes to mind. And
I think for us, I mean, there's an argument obviously for micro services, etc. But one of the headaches with that is needing to do all the integrations. Especially if you're in-house and you've got your data where it is, and you can just make use of it there and then using the language you use day to day. We think that's really, really super powerful.
Right, because you can
build microservices with Preside as well. Yeah. Yes.
And you can still do all those extensions and override the behavior even in all this email automation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So let's take a shift to another question here, Dominic, which is, and I'm asking this of all the people speaking into the box, which is, why are you proud to use ColdFusion?
We're proud to use it. I mean, I'm going to put it out there that we use Lucy only at the moment where we are, but so I'm proud to use that for its kind of open source origins. I'm also, I guess, proud to use ColdFusion for what I know that it can do. And what we can do with it. What particularly I enjoy about coding in CFML is the power and flexibility of the metaprogramming, which we use day to day, right? You're not stuck with what the language gives you. You can really nice and easily use metaprogramming and to extend it to create your own frameworks. And I know other languages do that. But there's always, it's always much more direct to do things in CFML without, if we say compare it to Ruby that does some really nice syntactic sugar around that, it's more straightforward. It's not quite so obscure as a language. It reads much better. And I'm proud to be, so we're also a member of the Lucy Association. So really proud to be involved with that and to help open source software stay alive, and perhaps one day that side of CFML will be what keeps CFML alive. That's what I hope. Well, I hope Adobe ColdFusion never does drop it, right, and then it remains strong and all of those things. But for us, we're kind of really proud to be a part of that and to contribute to that to kind of make sure it doesn't die.
Yeah. So, I mean, that brings me to the next question, which is, what would it take to make ColdFusion more alive this year?
Yeah, this year. Well, I think ColdFusion, so CFML, ColdFusion, I think we need to keep on doing the good work we're doing. I mean, I think what's coming out of things like CommandBox and ColdBox is a real growing up. I think it's clear that the community and the work around the language has a lot of catching up to do with other languages. But I think that's what it is. I think it's plugging harder and harder those tools that allow us to code more responsibly. And that when you get into those conversations with other language developers, and they're like, oh yeah, but this, you go, no, we have this. And actually, have you seen this? I mean, have you seen developing commands in CFML in CommandBox? It's awesome. I wrote a script just yesterday that is a command line script. So I run it just to set up some IP tables, port forwarding rules, and automatically setting up hosts files as a bash script, but I wrote it in CFML. And try writing that thing in bash, you would be there for a week. And it was so easy in CFML. So we have all of that power, and I think more onboarding of people to those kind of more responsible, cutting edge tooling around the language, and contributing to them. We see really awesome contributions now in ForgeBox and getting people involved with that. Of course, there's more to the world than just the box. infrastructure, but I really think that is the key area where we can launch ourselves. So I mean, even people that don't use ColdBox, etc., and Box products can use CommandBox with other things, and ForgeBox, migrating to that, and they're also really good people to work with, right? In that community spirit. So kind of just contributing and keep getting better. Yeah.
Cool. So what are you looking forward to at the Into the Box conference coming up soon?
Mostly just, chatting with developers and visiting Texas. I've never been to Texas.
I was wondering that. What are you looking forward to in Texas?
Well, just the different perspective. I'm sure it's Houston, I imagine, is very cosmopolitan, but I imagine it's a very different place from where I've been before. So I've been to New York, and I've been to Minneapolis with Dev Objective. Looking forward to meeting the friendly folk of Texas, and but hanging out with developers mostly, and getting the stateside perspective on things from us. We're very much European community, and I think there's we don't get much opportunity to come together. So I'm really looking forward to that. And yeah.
Are you going to CF Camp in Munich as well? Or?
Yes, we're sponsoring that, and in fact,
that's only
when you book
hop.
on that, when you book on that, the system you use will be our EMS actually, which you'll be using Preside to book on the event. So that'll be cool.
So when people see those personalized emails and they think they're being taken care of, really it's a piece of ColdFusion code,
exactly,
with some cascading inheritance going on to make it all appear
exactly
friendly and human.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
So if people want to find you, how would they do that?
So the website's at preside.org. That has links off to our community forum and our Slack channel. There's a little widget. I think you've been accustomed to doing that. We have our own Slack team. It seemed a quieter place. We're quite a small community, and it makes a lot of sense to have our own team with its own channels. So you can hop on there. We really pride ourselves.
Is that Preside something, or what's the Slack
I don't
channel?
know if you. It's Preside CMS, I believe, .slack.com. But obviously with Slack you need the invite. So if you go to preside.org, there's that little Heroku app that runs that you can click on, and it automatically sends you an invite, and then you can join. That's really easy. That's certainly the best way to get hold of us. And yeah, we do pride ourselves on our kind of grown-up and friendly community. There is absolutely zero nonsense in there. It's a good place to be. So yeah, absolutely come in and say hello. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks so much for being on the ColdFusion Alive podcast, Dominic.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.